This emergency episode of the Managing Madrid podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, who are the leaders in men's below-the-waist grooming, and you can get 20% off and free shipping with the code ManagingMadrid at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code ManagingMadrid at manscaped.com. And I can tell you who will not be winning any Manscaped Man of the Match awards anytime soon, and that's Kylian Mbappe. We're going to break that all down next. This episode is also brought to you by Moxie Miami South Beach Hotel, located in the heart of South Beach. They are proud sponsors of the Managing Madrid Podcast World Tour, which just wrapped up. We finished our entire world tour. It went from September to May. We hit up a bunch of cities in the United States. We went to Toronto. We did the UK. We did India. That was the last one we wrapped up. So thank you and congratulations to everyone who came out to those podcasts, traveled long distances, and just showed up and met us. And we got a chance to meet you. And we expanded this ever-growing Madridista family. This was a great season for us. We hit over 1,100 patrons and growing. We are giving away our signed Cristiano Ronaldo jersey soon. And we put out a ton of bonus podcasts for our patrons, and we will continue to do so all summer and beyond. This is just getting started. This is the beginning. It's not even close to being at its peak. We got years ahead of us, and I'm just super thankful for everyone who's joining this ever-growing Real Madrid family. We'd love to see you on the inside over on patreon.com/managingmadrid, where we are doing a ton of bonus shows, and you get a lot of perks. So do that. And thank you to Moxie for sponsoring this podcast. And we are going to get started with an intro from the great Ray Hudson and Derek Ray to set us up. And then we got an hour and a half or so of content of just pure Kylian Mbappe discussion, plus what's next, what to do with this influx of cash now, our thoughts on the whole situation, and a lot more. Let's go.
Nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there, and worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
All right, if you told me like a month ago that we'd be sitting here on a nice sunny Saturday instead of playing outside and playing volleyball and beach football and celebrating our new superstar signing for years to come, if you told me that instead of doing that, we'd be sitting here on a weird occasion discussing Kylian Mbappe doing a 180 turn, staying at PSG because he is now the richest man on the planet. He is part of the Illuminati. He is the new sporting director at PSG. He is the president of France. His entire family tree is sorted for generations to come. And now we got to just figure out how to break this down for the next, I'm assuming, an hour and a half, 2 hours. I don't know how much longer we can go. But, we had this recurring question that all of almost every pundit was asking the same question on Twitter. Who's crazier? Real Madrid for offering $200 million for a player that they were going to get for free last summer, or is it PSG for turning down $200 million for a player that they're going to lose for free? And it turns out the answer to that question might be neither of those two entities were crazy. They're both just trying to keep Mbappe or get Mbappe. So we're going to break this down. I'm joined by three of the crew today. I didn't even have to put out a bat signal or say Avengers Assemble or anything. Everyone DM'd me, hey, are we doing emergency Mbappe pod today? So we have Sid here, Jose here, Matt here, Omen and Lucas couldn't make it today, but they're going to do a podcast with us, I think, tomorrow. So welcome to the show, gentlemen. Matt, maybe we can start with you. Because just no bias, just because I think you were the first person to message me right away. You were on top of this. You were on top of your shit. Were you shocked? What was your initial reaction?
Oh, yeah, I was shocked. Even up to today, where the rumors started to circulate that he was closer to renewing with PSG than he was staying with Real Madrid, I still felt like no way is he actually going to renew with them. And you and I, even earlier this week, I mean, we joked about how there's just no chance he's not coming to Real Madrid. It's gotten to this point, he's days away from his contract expiring. When it comes to that, like, he's just been holding off and he's rejecting. I said he's as much a Madridista as you and I, because anybody else would have signed the deal that PSG gave him. But it turns out that this last and final offer, and I truly, I do not buy the fact that his mother said earlier that the offers are equal. No chance in hell those offers are equal. PSG threw the house at him, gave him everything. Like you said, generational wealth for however long his family tree is set. He's going to be sporting director, apparently. He's going to be calling all the shots. Neymar's out, Zidane's in, you name it. And so it's heartbreaking. It really is. It burns because it leaves us empty-handed after everything. And so I think, I mean, I'm still trying to collect my thoughts, but like, yeah, this was a shock. I really didn't think it was going to happen. And it goes to show you, like, nothing is ever done until you get that 100% contract signing. You see the picture, comunicado oficial comes out. Like, that's when you know it's done. Until then, it is never done. And I see a lot of people like kind of trying to bash like a lot of the Madrid insiders, that some of the journalists that report, like, come on, like they were getting the information. Everybody in Madrid, the Real Madrid, the entity, the club, the higher ups, the executives, Florentino himself, they all thought this deal was done. I'm even positive that they had an agreement signed in January. I think it's something very similar to the Figo deal. And I wouldn't be surprised if Real Madrid do get some sort of cash payment from PSG because of it. But I'm convinced that they had something signed, and that Mbappe was convinced that he was going to Madrid until this very last offer on like Tuesday or Wednesday when he met with PSG. Until then, I think in his head, he thought he was going to be a Real Madrid player next season.
The Figo bit is interesting, or the Figo parallel. We should revisit that at some point. Jose, what is your initial reaction to all this?
So, of course, we already, like, today I had already kind of given up on the whole, like, before the confirmation today, I was already on the side of like giving up on it. It's, I guess the lesson learned is that I think we still wanted to believe in a way that there were still ways that we could compete somehow against the state-funded clubs, that we could still offer the top players something that they wanted. And what it's clear is that, yeah, it's not. We're definitely. I mean, it shouldn't come as a surprise, but yeah, we're not in the times where like joining Real Madrid or Barcelona, like they don't have an unstoppable pool anymore. And it is slightly concerning because in the end, the aim for Florentino Perez and his current management of the team was always like, we are fundamentally a player-focused club, so that requires the club to get the best players in the world. And at this point, this is starting to look like if there is a player that is wanted by the state-funded clubs, then it's going to get harder and harder to get these kinds of players. And the tricky thing here is that it means that for player recruitment, Real Madrid needs to be smarter than it has been in the previous decades. I think the job the club has done already has not been bad, but they need to get even smarter if they want to, if the club wants to remain relevant in this time of like clubs with insane funding behind them.
Sid, I know I can count on you to bring in some conspiracies to today's podcast, probably some weird theories or something, which, to be honest, like I think we can definitely go in that direction at some point this podcast, or at any point in this podcast if you want. I do know that I will say this. I am pretty much open to anything, any ideas and any theories. I also think we should put a disclaimer. None of it can ever really be proven, and we'll never know unless Mbappe, we inject some truth serum into everyone and get some more information. I do agree with Matt that I think when his mother came out and said that the offers were equal, I think there's not a chance that's true. Not a chance that's true. Not a chance. Because if the offers were equal, I think we all kind of know what direction he'd go in. But Sid, hit us with your best shot, man. What do you got? I know you're dying to get some things off your chest.
Well, yeah, when she came out and said that the offers were equal, what she was saying is, I'm sorry, we pissed all your Real Madrid fans off. This is the best we can do to calm you down. It was damage control. It's PR. I'm convinced that they thought Mbappe was signing for years with Real Madrid. I'm convinced Mbappe planned this for years as well. And I think up till this week, where I disagree, and I think we shouldn't even get too pessimistic, is Real Madrid's offer was probably superior. Brand-wise, Real Madrid is bigger. Playing for Real Madrid will get you more deals with companies that otherwise would not be interested. Relative to any football club, the pull really is unstoppable. A state had to take it down to the last second to get him from us, is the way I view it. This is an unprecedented situation. We've never had a country like trying to go after a player, also with a World Cup coming up in 6 months. And then on top of that, you know, this guy's like the Emir of Qatar and Emmanuel Macron. It's been reported that they were putting pressure on Mbappe. I don't even think it's a conspiracy. It's been clearly reported that Macron gave calls to Mbappe telling him to stay in France for a few more years. So as a human being, when you are offered the chance to build something on your own, the ground up, where you have full control of the sporting project, you can fire this guy who's been pissing you off, Leonardo. When you have the chance to win the first CL in Paris and you get more money to do it, I think you take it, even if it's in a 2+1 deal, just because, like, and now this is where we get into speculation, because the true details of Kylian Mbappe's contract will probably be never put out to the public. I honestly think if you were to go and look at the conversations the Emir had with Mbappe, you would find that he was offered a lot more than anything that's been reported. We're talking like whatever Real Madrid can offer, they can throw in another 200 million. Like, it makes no sense to compete with the country. Like, they can just sell oil and, you know, literally offer him triple what we offer. It's not even close. And I think the amount of political power he gets, the amount of leverage he gets, the reports that he's trying to start his own media company like LeBron James. This is how sports are trending. Player power is becoming huge in basketball, where LeBron James in basketball literally runs his own agency where he takes players to his own teams. And if Mbappe is trying to set up this new, precedent where player power reigns supreme, and he does it by starting off a Champions League in Paris, and he gets paid more to do all this, why would he come to Real Madrid? It makes no sense.
The player empowerment piece is interesting. I mean, I actually immediately thought of LeBron, the GM version of LeBron, when I saw that, you know, now we're going to bring in Luis Campos, we're going to get rid of Leonardo, Pochettino's getting sacked. Look, I just want to say it out there. I will throw up, physically vomit, if Zidane is their coach. I will vomit. And I may just retire from journalism. I may just go buy a farm, and I may just live out the remaining years of my life raising cattle, because I don't think I could handle that reality. So I just wanted to put that out there. But
and I'm just visualizing you raising cattle right now.
I'm not even sure what it entails, but I'm sure it'll be better than watching Zidane coach PSG. Well, let's backtrack for a second here. The confidence that Real Madrid had in this, I think you guys already touched on it as to why they were confident. I think they had good reason to be confident, right? They weren't making this up as they went. What you said about how this could be a parallel to the Figo deal, where maybe that was a part of their confidence, where they had agreed with Mbappe that if he backs out of this, he has to pay a sum of money or whatever. I would be a little bit confused as to why Mbappe would agree to something like that, though. That's the only reason I'd be skeptical to something that, if that were true in this particular situation. With Figo, there were a few different ways they spun it, which we won't get into now because we've discussed in the past. But that's one thing. The other thing is, I'm curious to know, like, how you guys feel about the ship sailing point. Everyone is saying the ship has sailed. It's done. Like, in 3 years, forget about this bullshit. Do not come back and make this fiasco again. We're done. Where do you stand on that? Do you agree?
The fan in me agrees. I think I like when I see reports, oh, Real Madrid is absolutely done. They've discarded the signing of Kylian Mbappe forever. I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm on that boat. But I think in reality, I think if Mbappe goes on to win the Ballon d'Or, he's the main player in this World Cup. He scores 50 goals a season, like and he's then professes his love again to Real Madrid and like tries to right his wrongs somehow. I'm sure we'll do this dance again. I wouldn't be that surprised. But I hope I'm wrong, because we've looked to build around Mbappe since he signed for PSG, really. Like, it's been the last 3 years, if not more, where we've been talking about, like, even during COVID, we sold Ashraf, we sold Odegaard, we sold all these young talents that we were gonna build around, and we told ourselves it's okay. Odegaard can go because Mbappe is coming. Ashraf can go because we gotta survive the pandemic and make sure we have enough. We build the war chest for Mbappe, and now we're at this point. Haaland's now no longer an option because we wanted to 100% focus on Kylian Mbappe, and we didn't see how the two of them could mix. And now we're at this point where we're left empty-handed, and we really don't have a plan B. Like, even if we draw up a list of transfer targets right now, and like a summer we would be happy with, we reinforce other positions, we get guys like, even if we get guys like Reece James, who I don't think is attainable, but like, let's say we get him somehow, like, even then it's still hard to settle. It's still hard to, like, when you knew how close you were to Kylian Mbappe, who is a generational talent, who is supposed to be the cornerstone of this youth project that we put together. We signed all these young prospects, and then Mbappe was going to be the crown jewel. He was going to lead the next generation, and it's all gone in one day.
Jose?
I feel similarly about it. It's like all of that time and effort that has been spent on it just to end up like this. And I have a similar viewpoint as Matt, that of course the fan in me would say, yeah, we don't want to deal with this person ever again. But the reality is that as soon as PSG gets another ridiculous Champions League elimination, the rumors are gonna go back again. That's how the news cycle works. So it's going to happen again. By the time he finishes his contract, he's going to be 26. You can still get like a solid 4 or 5 years of Mbappe on another contract. So I think it's still going to be very likely that the team will be linked to him again. Now, the more interesting question is whether will this club sign Mbappe as long as Florentino Perez is president? That I am not completely sure. That is something that I am still not sure. We'll have to see. I mean, Florentino is a very pragmatic man, so I imagine that if he had the chance, he would do it again. But or who knows, maybe his pride would get the best out of him in this situation. We don't know, but that's the main thing that I don't know. I don't know if Florentino himself will go for it again, but I am pretty sure that sometime in the next 5 years, the club will be linked to signing Mbappe again, independently of whether we like it or not. The player is too big and the club is too big to have those links not come back at some point.
Instead, I want to get your thoughts in a second too. I just wanted to make a point on that also. In 3 years, the worst part about all this is that in 3 years is when that reported release clause for Haaland also kicks in. So we could be back to this exact same thing in 3 years with the Haaland and Mbappe thing. By the way, Haaland and Mbappe entering their peak at the same time. Their age is similar enough to have that conversation. Benzema was retired. It's, we've been football fans for long enough to know how this works. People forget shit real fast. We're talking about this in the moment. By next weekend, people are going to be like, I think Mbappe was under pressure. He didn't want to go to PSG. Maybe he was being held hostage. Maybe they held him maybe there was some safety for his family involved in this, and they had to stay in Paris. It's not his fault. They're gonna forgive quickly if this situation arises again in 3 years. But you do make a good point, Jose. What is Florentino going to think? Because he has always been the kind of president, like, if you want to be here, you're here. And like that's why players like Vasquez and Nacho have survived, right? Whereas if you're a superstar, if you even give us a bit of a hard time or you start playing hardball with us, man, go play hardball somewhere else. We don't need you. That happened with Odegaard, it happened with Ramos. It doesn't matter how good or how bad you are. Sometimes the less talented players win because of the loyalty. Sid, has the ship sailed for you?
No, and actually you're speaking my language. 3 years, I could totally see them going back for both of them, and I could see both of them being at a point where they're ready to take a step up brand-wise, having seen what 3 years at an oil club is like. But to backtrack from there, I don't think the chapter is closed because at the end of the day, I think PSG made him an offer he couldn't refuse, which allowed him to put his childhood dream off for a couple more years, is the way I see it. Because essentially, even with him as the GM and sporting director and president all in one, directly talking to the Emir, directly getting the checks from Emir, handing them to other sporting directors, who knows? But even with him doing all that, there's no guarantee they win the Champions League, as we just talked about. And I'm pretty sure I saw a report, and at least instinctively, it made sense to me. It said he's going to sign a 2+1, and he has an option on the third year, whether he wants to take it or not. That's a very basketball style deal, very LeBron James style deal, where you have the option to leave at any point. Any year you can break the contract almost. And I guess he's going to give them 2 years so that he gives them a chance. I think also when we think about how the club reacted and Perez reacted, I think the fans and all of us were definitely saying at some point initially, we're never going to sign this guy again. But yeah, that was my reaction for 10 seconds. And I think players are humans. They're going to talk to Mbappe. I think Benz and Mbappe will get along fine for France. And I think they're humans. He's going to understand. And, I don't think the ship has sailed at all. And if anything, I believe next time he wants to join, he may not hold us to the same ransom, even potentially. He was on a free contract right now, or maybe he will. I really don't understand Mbappe right now. I thought I had a grip on him, and it turns out he's very good at, using negotiations for leverage. Now, where I'm not so pessimistic is, yes, we lost Ashraf. I love Ashraf, but I'm sure there'll be other generational right backs. Yes, we lost Odegaard, who's pulling strings for Arsenal, but we still have Camavinga and Valverde. And not only that, if we can get Tchouameni, I think our midfield then is in the Barcelona category of like absolute prodigies, like Pedri's on their team. I think we have some, like Camavinga to me is a serious prodigy. I think he is like an Mbappe level midfielder if we're going there. Tchouameni as well. I think, the three-peat team that won, Marcelo was the best at his position. Ramos, best at his position. I think I'm seeing that Camavinga and Tchouameni are going to be amazing. Vinicius is Vinicius. We've seen Rodrigo. Matt, you've been talking extensively about the leap Rodrigo's taken at the end of the season. Now, we could easily pivot to something like Tchouameni, a right back, and maybe Serge Gnabry. Serge Gnabry is now all of a sudden a serious option because he is pretty locked in with Bayern, in my opinion. I think he's an option that we can consider, just like we could consider Mo Salah. So I actually think since we were already forced to pivot to young players a few years ago in preparation for Mbappe, and I think Camavinga and Vinicius are like top end, and Tchouameni are such top end outcomes to have even without Mbappe, that I actually can't feel that concerned, especially with Rudiger coming in too.
Can we, before we get too far down the plan B kind of path, I do want to bring up, touch on a little bit more what you mentioned in terms of like your image now of Mbappe and kind of what this drama and this whole transfer saga, how it's dragged out. And maybe do you think if it was done differently, like we would have a different perception of him? Because for so long, we all felt like, oh man, he's holding out. Like he's rejected so many offers, and just this guy is he truly wants to be at Real Madrid. And then just the way it's kind of all gone down in the last week or so, where it seemed everything was done and dusted last weekend. Like Madrid was super confident. Everything that was coming out from the Spanish media was, it's done. Mbappe has chosen Real Madrid. And then they feel completely betrayed. They feel like his word means nothing, and that he's just gone and used Madrid as leverage to get the best contract in all of world football ever. And so I don't know. I mean, I feel like, and I know this is something Lucas touched on Twitter quite a bit. Like, I feel this hurts. Like this, you feel Real Madrid must feel used, and like I don't know. It does change my perception of him. Like I really felt like he was a boy with a dream that couldn't turn. It didn't matter how much money was being thrown at him. Like nothing was going to stop him. And yet here we are. And honestly, Sid, you made the point, like any normal person would probably take this deal. It's like too good to be true. And if you can do it for 2 years and still get to Real Madrid, then it's probably worth it for any normal person. But just the way it's kind of dragged out, like it leaves a bad taste in the mouth.
Well, just to briefly add to that, that's why I have to say, just remind everyone, any Real Madrid fan listening, anyone listening, honestly, this is unprecedented for a reason, for 2 reasons. One, player power is changing in sports, as I said earlier. Really have to go look at LeBron James to understand where Mbappe is going with this, because I can kind of see it coming together now. LeBron James in basketball has, he jumps franchise, and he can use a franchise and leverage his own power to make the franchise align with his goals and get him what he wants. And Mbappe has now that's just becoming more of a thing in soccer. Players are running down their contracts. Mbappe just happens to be the most powerful player in the game right now, given his age and value. And it's just, that's one side of it. And then the other side is there's never been a country on the other side of the negotiating table. Like this is the first time a country like Man City have never gone for a player of this caliber. That leaves, like, Haaland is great. He's not close to Mbappe. That leaves Neymar and Barcelona. And remember, it was really weird when that happened too. They wrote a check from the Qatar Sports Investment Authority for 250 million for Neymar. It was so weird to read it, just thinking like that a tourist authority could write a check for a player. So that's where I think, it's more about, it's a business at the end of the day. And we've just never had a country involved in business. Now, before we get to talking about plan Bs, I guess a thought for all of you. I don't know. Now, we saw reports saying that UEFA or that La Liga might try and report this for financial fair play. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to lead to backlash against PSG and City, or if this is just going to make more power players get involved. I think Real Madrid might soon get the backing of the state or someone really powerful, and I believe there's just going to be bigger players coming behind Real, Barca, Bayern, in my opinion.
I don't see it. I don't see Real Madrid ever relinquishing that the way they run it. In favor of getting state owned and losing their power. They would lose their power. They would never do that. I don't see it happening. What needs to happen, which is I understand that's not what you're asking, but what needs to happen is we need to come up with a model where this is not possible. Tebas's point today and yesterday. Today he tweeted basically what he said in the interview yesterday. It's like a rare moment where I agree with him, where it's like this team had 700 million in losses, and they're just able to just throw this money at him, and there's no repercussions. The one thing of financial fair play, though, there is misconception about what it actually means. Financial fair play, if you look at the ruling and what it's designed for, it's designed so that clubs don't go bankrupt. So basically, if you can prove you can handle the losses, and you can not go under, and you can operate, then you can basically do whatever you want. But it's basically designed for more like for teams like Elche or Malaga, who there were moments in the past where they couldn't pay their salaries to their players, and their players are not making that much to begin with. It's to avoid situations like that, and so clubs don't go bankrupt. But they need to reform the whole model and make it more fair. And we're also speaking as Real Madrid fans, right? And so we're not, it's not uncommon for even Real Madrid players and legends to use us as bargaining chips. We've seen Varane do it before. We've seen Sergio Ramos do it before. But this was on another level I've never seen. And, I've lived through the Figo fiasco, which to me was the most mind-blowing thing of all time. I lived through the whole Zidane thing, which to be honest wasn't that controversial because it was Zidane. It was just like, I'm going to sign for you guys. Cristiano Ronaldo, all these guys, we lived through them, but nothing was like this. This was completely, as you said, unprecedented. I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen I sympathize with what Matt is saying as well, because to me, I kind of just don't look at him the same after this. You know, it was a little bit beyond. Like I can respect choosing a better financial offer, but I also look, and I'm very cautious about speaking like this, because I never want to seem like I'm like some kind of ethically superior being, because I'm obviously not. And you put me in front of two offers, one is financially better than the other, then, you know, I'm not going to say I'm not going to take the better one. But as a Real Madrid fan, I'm going to choose being a 100 millionaire and play for Real Madrid rather than be 100 gajillion infinite bear and play for PSG. That part, I'm like, man, how much more money could you possibly need to dissuade you from your childhood club? Like, how much money?
Well, the question is, dissuade it for 2 years, maybe. What if the question is, how much more money would we have to give you to convince you to not go for just 2 more years? Just consider that. Just because if you look at Benzema and the way he's aging.
But the bridges you burn there, though, like, look what he's done with his relationship to Real Madrid and their fans. Like, yes, maybe it's repairable, but damn, like, you've done serious damage.
Yeah, he has. I mean, look, Sid, you're an NBA fan, you're a LeBron fan. We saw fans burning LeBron's jersey in Cleveland and then welcoming him back with open arms when he said, "I'm coming back." People forgive and forget, you know, once he starts scoring goals, if he does eventually come. I do think this discussion is far from over. I understand what people are saying about the ship is sailed, but Lucas also brought up another point on Twitter, which I thought was actually interesting and worth revisiting. And one of Lucas's tweets made it on ESPN. I don't know if you guys saw that. ESPN FC did you know how they do things where they'll like put tweets of fans and they'll make a graphic and they'll say agree or disagree. Lucas's tweet made it on ESPN. But one of the things that he said that didn't make it on ESPN was when you see him doing this now, there's no question that at some point in Real Madrid he was going to create some kind of drama. Like, he was going to do this. Like, so if it just seems like he's going to be in the situation where he's going to be, even if it's 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, there's going to be like these periodic Mbappe moments with him where he's just going to piss a lot of people off. I also just wonder how PSG fans feel about him right now. He also just drained his own club of financial resources, and whether you want to look at us or them, basically he used both parties as a bargaining chip in the end. And I wonder how they feel about him. Do they just not care? I'm not sure, but I'd at least be curious to see how they feel about the whole situation. Also, if he had not signed with them, look at PSG are in a lot of trouble. Like, if you look at their sporting project, Messi's old, Neymar is injury prone. They don't really have an exciting team moving forward if you look at their roster. So, on some level, I understand they had to bring in the whole nation to sign this guy because their whole project maybe fails at that point. Sorry, Sid, I cut you off.
No, I would like Jose to.
Oh yeah, at this point, well, before we and we've been saying this for a while, but it's like before we move on to Plan B talk. So the other question I want to ask everyone is, where do you think this whole drama leaves Florentino at the moment? Like, what do you think is the current? Because the way I see it is that 3 years of squad planning were sacrificed a bit to build up this war chest. We can see now that it was probably not the smartest move to put all of those eggs in one basket. Frankly, Florentino, after all this, he was basically one Vinicius explosion away from keeping his head. Because if Real Madrid didn't get that Vinicius explosion this year, then this season would have likely not happened, and you would have ended up empty-handed and without Mbappe. So that would have likely killed him politically at Real Madrid. So I just wonder, how do you think does this failure change the perception that the Real Madrid environment will have of Florentino or not?
we also can't forget the Super League disaster and how much that hurt Florentino and his reputation. I mean, this is now 2 major failures in the span of less than 2 years. So, yeah, I mean, I think Florentino is definitely damaged. That being said, like, I think Madrid did everything they could in this scenario. I don't know if you guys disagree, but I don't know that there's much more that they could do. And I know many people argue like, oh, well, in January, like sign the contract. Maybe the worst thing that happened was that we drew PSG in the Champions League round of 16 because Mbappe may have signed an actual contract in January had we not drawn them. And the more time you give to a deal, that's a saying in sales too. Like the more time there is in contract negotiations, the less likely a deal is going to get done. And so that's what happened to Real Madrid. It just gave him more time to think. It gave PSG more time to whisper sweet nothings into his ear day after day, and just say, hey, every time you get an offer from Real Madrid, just bring it to us. Let us see it. They see it, and then they just double, triple, quadruple, whatever they need to do to get the deal done, to keep him around for that World Cup. I think that's the other piece of it. If the World Cup wasn't in Qatar in 6 months and we didn't draw PSG in the UEFA Champions League round of 16, I wonder if this deal, Mbappe, would have been signed in January. But yeah, like I really don't think that you can. It's hard to criticize Florentino with how everything happened. Like this was just, as Kiyan said, unprecedented. We've never seen anything like this. A U-turn when he's just days away or a month away from being a free agent completely. I wouldn't trade Florentino. At this point, I still wouldn't trade Florentino. I believe that his pros far outweigh the cons.
Yeah, I'm with you. Florentino's pros outweigh his cons. I think there are 3 major questions here, but I'll start with Perez. While you are right that he was a Vinicius explosion away from being burnt at the stake, essentially now but it's just like the world of difference. The point is, it was a Vinicius explosion was the thing we were waiting for because he's the big young piece we thought that would come big. But now it's clear Federico Valverde has stepped up this season. I think Camavinga won't even need an explosion. I think he's just going to steadily settle into being a top midfielder as from what we've seen so far. And if we can get Tchouameni and Rudiger, that's a lot of world-class ability that's on the rise that just didn't exist at the start of the season. Like that you couldn't really foresee this clearly. And so I think Perez is safe just because all that auxiliary talent is just going to carry this team forward. Now, I'm more so wondering, I think there's a lot more sympathy for Perez and Real Madrid in the situation across Europe now than there was a year ago when he tried creating the Super League. This is a totally different situation. Everyone, even people who are laughing at Real Madrid are like, okay, but like the La Liga president's right. Like this makes no sense financially. And so I don't know. It's not as doom and gloom for me, but I think that's because the motivations make sense to me in that I've been through a saga like this already. It happened 2 years ago in basketball, and it was when a man named Kawhi Leonard actually was pretty much using the Lakers and Clippers against each other in LA. And the Lakers are a historic organization like Real Madrid, and I wanted Kawhi Leonard to play on the Lakers. And
just remember, you're talking to the most heartbroken person overall. I was a Raptors fan. When I got the news that he was leaving us that day on a fine summer day, just remember, don't play victim here. I'm the victim. We're the victims, not you. You successful LA folks out there.
Well, I knew he was going to leave Toronto because of the weather. I knew he was coming to one of the warm, sunny LA teams. But between them, essentially, he threatened to form a super team on the Lakers, and he got all the Lakers fans hyped up, really hyped up. And Lakers are one of the biggest franchises in sports as well. I would say their fandom is pretty comparable to any organization in America. And essentially, his own personal goals went ahead of were more important to him than upsetting millions and millions of fans. And, he cared more about his personal brand. And so he chose the Clippers, and he pretty much used all the Lakers fans' desire against them. And Mbappe has done the same thing here. However, that's where we're starting to see that there is a conflict between a player building a brand and an organization. Mbappe, without a doubt, would probably have been bigger than the club in some ways if he came. And that's the trade-off that he's aware he's taking when I think he's staying at PSG. He's aware that he's pretty much choosing to make the Mbappe brand more central to his life than Real Madrid. And as much as I love Real Madrid, when it comes to pure wealth building, it might be the better strategy, frankly. And especially if you still have the option to come to Real Madrid in 2 years, because people have short memories, as LeBron left Cleveland and he went back, as you said, they burned his jerseys. He was back. So from that standpoint, I think he definitely stung us. And I definitely think that next time we go back for negotiations, there will be a sense of like discomfort, like, hey, you burnt us like this once. And, that's when it'll become apparent whether Mbappe is a Madridista or not. My thinking is that essentially, if he is this powerful, he should be able to either succeed at PSG, but as we've discussed, that's such a basket case club that's not even a guarantee, even if you let him make all the decisions in a logical way. So there's still a real chance that he doesn't succeed at PSG, that he's still a really powerful human being who wants to spend his prime years at Real Madrid. And honestly, I think the way this went down is just so novel that it's going to take longer to process. But, this is like halfway between Hazard and Ronaldo for me. Ronaldo, he was denied leaving United 1 year before, and then he finally came to us at 24. Hazard got here a year too late, clearly. I think Mbappe is going to come right in between, where we're not going to have the same affinity for him as Ronaldo. We're not going to see him play 24 through 32. But, I don't think that door's closed at all, just because the motivations are very understandable just from a standpoint of his own life.
So I've been frantically taking notes on everything you guys are saying just to make sure I don't miss anything, because I want to revisit some of those things. Let's bring forward Mbappe stuff like a little bit later, because I think we need a break from him, because I want to talk about the squad building aspect of this. And your point about Florentino, I mean, the thing with Florentino is that he, like any other president, will have some luck. I think that the two he's gotten really lucky with, one you just mentioned, Vinicius, because the margin of error here was so slim, right? Vinicius' leap was key. However, he should be given credit for signing Vinicius in the first place. So there's that. But the other one, like he got really lucky with, was when he sacked Ancelotti after a great season where he did his best to bring the team to the Champions League semifinals, and the team was decimated with injuries, and he lost 2 key players in the summer. He reinvented the team, made it work, and was sacked anyway. And he got somehow lucky hiring Rafa Benitez, because Benitez was so bad that they had to let him go, and then they stumbled upon Zidane, which somehow ended up in one of the greatest periods in Real Madrid history. And so we got lucky with that too. But what I think buys him a lot of points, apart from the obvious stuff, like he's just been great at so many things, like you guys said, the cost-benefit analysis heavily weighs in his favor. He navigated the pandemic expertly, and now he has a redemption arc of what are we going to do with this money that didn't go to Mbappe. And I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that, because if we actually just calm down for a second and think about the situation of this squad, it's actually really promising without Mbappe still. Champions League finals coming up. We won the league. You wouldn't have thought of it with the doom and gloom that's happened today, but we're in a great position. We have 2 phenomenal young wingers. At least one of them is a future Ballon d'Or candidate, if you ask me, if he continues on this trajectory. As Sid said, the midfield options we have, Camavinga and Fede, are brilliant. And we got arguably the best player in the world right now in who is somehow still in his prime, leading the attack. So we got some good things happening, right? Courtois is not going anywhere anytime soon. Goalkeepers also can kind of have longer longevity, and they can play at their peak of their powers a little bit longer. So we got things happening. Rudiger, fantastic signing. And now we have some money to play with. So where does that money go? So here, I'll throw out some of the names that have been thrown out that I've seen. Salah, whose contract ends next summer, 2023, hasn't renewed yet with Liverpool. Not sure what's going to happen there. Gnabry, which is a personal favorite of mine, because I just love how much of an assassin he is as a line-breaking menace on the wings. Really interesting signing. Then we have the other positions, like Tchouameni. Like, what are we going to do with the right back position? Would Chelsea be coaxed into Reece James? I doubt it, but it'd be cool to see that. The one I'm curious to know about, because Matt mentioned Haaland at the top of the podcast that maybe we would, if we knew this was happening, we would have signed Haaland. And man, the endless amount of hours we discussed with Haaland and Mbappe and how that's going to fit, and that's a dead dream right now. But I actually do wonder how much Haaland was connected to Mbappe. I have my doubts on that, because everyone's saying like, well, we should have just went all in for Haaland if that was the case. But I think people are forgetting that Haaland, it wasn't the coexistence with Mbappe that was the problem to me. Although you could argue maybe some of the ego things that will they get along or whatever. But to me, the conversation was always, if it's not going to work, it's because Benzema's still unbelievable, and I think you can't bench him. That's more. So I wonder if Haaland was more connected to Benzema being really, really, really damn good, and not so much Mbappe. There's that. That theory will be put to bed if we go for Lewandowski now, which I just don't know if that's a wise move. I just don't want us to fall into the trap of like, all right, we got to get revenge on PSG. Let's sign everyone, fit or good fit or bad fit. Don't give a damn. Let's bring them in. That's what I'm worried about. Lewandowski at this age on a shorter term contract, coinciding with Benzema's peak. I just don't know if that's a great idea. But why don't we start with you, Matt? Squad building, squad construction, the links to Haaland, how connected it was to Mbappe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Lewandowski, incredible player, but just not the fit we need right now. And so I wouldn't waste time or resources on that potential signing. What I do think is like, yeah, we've got pieces. We've said even last year, forget Mbappe, we're like 4 or 5 signings away from having a world-class team and a great team that we can really count on. And so I think right wing position, like guys I would look at is, I definitely like Gnabry. Mo Salah, I don't know. I feel like he's getting up there a little bit in age. And so it would depend on the financials involved in the deal. And then one guy, Mahrez, I don't think you mentioned. I love Mahrez. I think he'd be a great right winger. And then what I would look to do is Bernardo Silva would be a guy I would consider where he can be that hybrid right winger or center midfield. You want to play Rodrigo, you want to put Bernardo on midfield, okay. If you want to put Bernardo on the wing and you want to play Valverde or Modric, whatever, okay, you can do that. So he would be one I would definitely look at. And he wanted to leave City last year. In Spain, I mean, most Portuguese players love to play in Spain. So he's definitely, I mean, I think that would be not a relatively hard sell. Then, like you guys have said, Tchouameni, Rudiger, I think Tchouameni has to become a priority. Rudiger is one of the best center backs in the world for me, one of the best in the world in the last year or 18 months. And so, and then we got to figure out, I think, a right back and a left back too. I don't think we can leave out the left back position. And if now we went with Fran Garcia Miguel as like cheaper options, but now that you've got money, maybe you go bigger in the left back department and you bring someone in who can really and truly compete with Furlan and be a totally different profile, maybe one of the lethal attacking left back. And so that's kind of where my head's at. And then obviously a backup striker too. I do think we need a backup striker. If we're not going to use Jovic, we're not really going to use Mariano, then it's a World Cup year. Benzema's probably not going to be able to play as much as he did this year. Who knows if he keeps it up? Like maybe you look at a Raul de Thomas. Maybe you look at somebody who will actually get some minutes.
This is a great point about the backup striker, because in my mind, I didn't think about a backup striker at all this whole time, because to me Mbappe was the backup striker basically, and you don't really need anyone beyond that. Because if Benzema goes down, you just put Mbappe in that role, and you just twist it. You put Rodrigo and Vinicius on either side of him. You don't really need a backup striker. Completely forgot about. So that's a great point as well to bring up. Jose, what do you do?
All right. So this is the fun part. This is where I get to think about the possibilities. So the main thing is that we should. I would say that Real Madrid should avoid trying to go for like the 30-year-olds. It's just. I think after the club experience, what happened with Hazard, the same mistake. Like, for example, signing Salah gives me major Hazard vibes. Like, you're getting this guy on the last year of his contract. Liverpool is still going to sell him for like 100 million. He already had like probably his 5 peak years, and now it's just going to be like, I have really bad vibes about that one. So no. And in general, like Mahrez is really good, but he's 31. Lewandowski also, of course, just no, it doesn't work out.
I didn't realize Mahrez was that old already.
I know. So all of those signings are definitely, I wouldn't be looking forward to them. I would do unspeakable things to get Reece James and Bernardo Silva into this team, because Bernardo is a player that just gives you, I would say that, like looking into the future, Tchouameni is, I love that guy. Like I love that player, like just a very elegant midfielder. But I think, especially now that you don't get like another insane goal scorer like Mbappe, I think there should be like also priority on getting more goals and aggressiveness from midfield. Because say you get Tchouameni, and I still think the midfield options, it's still a bit flat in terms of goals, assists, guys, because it's a midfield that will still be very focused on control rather than trying to make that final pass. So I do like a lot the idea of signing Bernardo, because he gives you a lot of those options. He gives you a more aggressive number 8 with a good goal and assist record. He can play as a winger if needed. Just so many options, which is why I think for the club, like just making, say, 70 million offer for Bernardo, 70, yeah, do it. It's worth it. And of course, Reece James would be another dream signing because, yeah, one of the best in his position. Then as far as the other right winger options, I still think my favorite one, due to profile, cost, etc., would still be Gnabry. I like the player. He's adaptable. Yeah, there's a lot of, and he's on the right side of the age curve. So 26 years, good age to get him. Another good winger. I mean, Nkunku just became the best player in the Bundesliga. Insanely good season. The only thing is that he plays more. He's played on the right side, but he exploded playing on the left side. So you get into another conflict with Vinicius. So I would still be on this. So I think due to contract fit and a lot of other things, I think Gnabry would be a really good signing, kind of for the right side, for the right winger role. And yeah, I mean, for me, a dream summer is like get Reece James, Bernardo, and Gnabry, and that's beautiful. Tchouameni is, of course, probably my preferred option if you want to have a defensive midfielder. Especially after what I've seen Camavinga do over the last couple months and playing many times as the deepest midfielder, you start to wonder. It's like, how are we gonna fit him and Tchouameni? Like there's actually that it would be a good problem to have, because there are a lot of options, because Camavinga can just play like kind of a similar role to Kroos, like an 8 that's more focused on possession and control. While Tchouameni is more focused on defensive tasks. You could even move like a double pivot of those two would be really good, and both of them are really good at pressing actions. So I think those four names, Tchouameni, Gnabry, Bernardo, and Reece James would be like my preferred signings for the team at the moment.
What about a backup striker? What would you do there?
Oh yeah, for the backup striker. I am. What's the current status of Mayoral? I am actually in favor of getting him back, simply because profile-wise it works out if you need a Benzema replacement, and he's matured as a goal scorer compared to the last time he was in Madrid.
What about Gabriel Jesus as a name to throw out there? Would you hijack him going to Arsenal?
I like that option.
It wasn't a strong yes, but it wasn't a strong no either. It was kind of interesting.
I hadn't thought about it. I still think if I compare it to like the Gnabry option, I still like Gnabry better. But I think like Jesus as part, like I don't see him as like the ideal starter in the team, but it would be an amazing rotation option to have. It's just that, yeah, do you want, like right now, the prices that are being talked about is like, what, 60 million? It's like, do we want to spend 60 million on a rotation option? Not sure. But I think he would be a great way to add like, I don't know, like 15 goals a season for the team, which, I mean, you can always use those.
Sid, where are you on the squad development spectrum?
I love the way Jose rubbed his hands, and that's how I feel too. I'm ready. And just to start, I think, Jose, you made a great point about the double pivot with Camavinga, Tchouameni. You weren't seeing the fit too clearly, which surprised me. And when you were talking, you were almost talking yourself out of it a little, whereas I love talking myself into it, because with those guys, you can build very unstructured midfields that can compete with highly structured midfields like Chelsea, City, and Liverpool, because they're just so good at pressing and so intuitively good at winning the ball. Sort of like Madrid, where if they're in their physical peak and they can grow a little more technically playing next to these guys, they're going to be devastating, and they won't even need like a top coach to tell them what to do at points. Like, their tackling is amazing no matter who they play for. And that to me is important, because I think the hardest part about the modern game now is coaching teams to consistently press and use all their skills while also knowing how to like not overexert themselves. You know, it's this nuanced level of modern football where there are many ways to win. And I just love the skill set, like floor they give us at all times. Along with Valverde, it's just such a combative midfield. And they're not too bad technically either, given all that level of physicality. And I'm not sure if I'm as big on Bernardo, because I actually like Dani Ceballos, and I think we have a lot of we still have Cruz and Modric. Like, I think Bernardo might be like great, but I have a lot of names here, and looking at some of these other names, you know, same thing as Salah, where like he's not as ideal a fit for me as Gnabry. Just age, price, and ability to add goals to the team. Now, Lewandowski is a great fit at Barcelona, I think. I think at Bayern, I think he was starting to monopolize the Nagelsmann offense a little bit in the way he demanded the ball all the time. He wanted everything to be catered to him, is what I was reading the whole season, literally. And basically, I understand why. Like, he's had this whole thing where he's regretted not playing for Real or Barca at some point in his career and winning many Champions Leagues. And it makes sense to me that he goes to Barca, and I think he's a great fit there. Now, unfortunately, I saw one rumor about this just once, and I don't know if it's true, but what if they look to bring back Cristiano Ronaldo as a goal scorer? I don't know if that's true. I saw it once randomly, and I'm like, unless he takes a massive pay cut, this wouldn't make sense. If he takes a massive pay cut, would the club consider a reunion? I don't know. I don't think they will. I wouldn't go for Gabriel Jesus just because I don't like guys who can't finish. I just don't like that. You know, I love him as a player. He presses really well, but you know, he chokes too much in front of goal for me, and I just want clinical players. I've seen enough of guys who can not finish, like Benzema 4 years ago. You know, I don't want more of that. And yeah, I think overall the names I'd go for are Gnabry, Tchouameni, and I would definitely try and get another striker in. I think there will be some names that will crop up that we are surprised about because everyone thought Mbappe is joining. We're going to pretty much put feelers out there that we have money and we'd love a top player. And some top player who thought we were occupied might just look at us and say, hey, I want to be a part of this rebuild. We have strong personalities like Alaba, Rudiger. Like, either way, we were marketing this as a big summer at Real Madrid to whoever we were signing. This was being marketed as the summer we take a big leap forward, that we invest in the squad. So my prediction is Tchouameni and Gnabry, I think, were major names we're going to look at. But I think there's going to be some surprise here that none of us are talking about right now. I don't know who, but, you know, a big spot just opened up at a rich club that's in the Champions League final.
So as we're going through the list, my thought is that I think once we get past Gnabry, I agree with you guys on Salah. It's not a name that really excited me, to be honest. As unbelievable as a player he is, it's not really a knock on him, but I do have similar concerns as to what you guys expressed. I'm kind of okay. Like, if we get Gnabry, Tchouameni, and you know, some of the other names we mentioned for other spots like a Reece James or whatever, again, I don't think that's necessarily realistic. But once we get past those names, I'm okay with not signing someone just for the sake of signing someone. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen clubs have influx of cash and just lighting it on fire. the most recent example, obviously, was with Barca, with the fact, really just taking that Neymar money and getting Coutinho and Dembele, and it was all gone all of a sudden. Just from a great situation, a lot of cash to just no cash and long-term headaches. So, we've discussed the Hazard situation in the past. Barcelona in the past, they also used that Figo money that they received, which at a time was a world record, and lit it on fire as well, just going another route and buying a bunch of mediocre players for that money that really didn't help them. So, we don't need to go out of our way because Vinicius and Rodrigo are really, really good. So am I thrilled about thinning our depth chart and now all of a sudden Asensio was the 12th guy instead of Rodrigo? No, I'm not thrilled with that, but I also don't want us to just overreact and buy someone and give them a long-term contract and it not panning out and giving ourselves another Bale or Hazard headache. That's not what I want either. Unless again, a name comes out that we haven't thought about because, like Sid said, that just comes out of nowhere. I'm writing I have a chapter. It's actually already completely written. It's finished in my book. It's a chapter of what ifs, the biggest what ifs in Real Madrid history. My hope is that I can add this one into that chapter as a positive one, because there was a huge what if last summer. If Mbappe had joined, what would have happened to Vinicius' career? And I would guess it completely changes the arc of Vinicius' career, because we do not get this Vinicius that we saw this year. And I had convinced myself up until now that it was a blessing we didn't get Mbappe, because now all of a sudden, and Lucas and I discussed it on the podcast as a patron asked us the question, instead of Vinicius coming last summer as the savior to come and help our team, Vinicius stepped up. He got his preferred left wing position in, which wouldn't have happened if Mbappe was here, I don't think. He would have come off the bench or played on the right. He would have been sacrificed. He wouldn't have been the same Vinicius we know today. And now, instead of that, Mbappe stayed in Paris. Vinicius plays on the left wing all season, is one of the best wingers in the world. And Mbappe would come to a situation where I guess I'm not the absolute savior anymore. This team is in the Champions League final. They knocked my team out. They won the league. And one of the best wingers in the world plays in my preferred position. So I'm not saying that would have been a deterrent for him, but it definitely changes the dynamic of the desperation, I guess we put it that way, of whose team it is and what the expectations are. Now all of a sudden he's coming to a really good team instead of coming in to save a team that really desperately needed help. So that was a good what if in Real Madrid history to some extent. I'm hoping that this summer becomes the same for some unforeseen thing that we don't know what it is yet. That we use this money in a really wise way. We lock down several positions that are very important. Maybe if Tchouameni, we were deterred from him because of financial reasons, we are not deterred anymore. And we all love Tchouameni on this podcast. I'm okay with dealing with the problems as they come with him with regards to playing time. Partly because I was encouraged of the way Camavinga eventually got incorporated into this team, where I was a little bit pessimistic or skeptical of whether Ancelotti would rotate and get him in and not waste his development. But now it turns out he's developed great. And I think Carlo will probably rotate more next season, because he started to trust his bench players at the end of this season. He's starting to give them more playing time. My assumption, it's not a fact, but my assumption for next season would be that he would do that more. And I think Tchouameni could fall into the Camavinga category of maybe he'll start slow, he'll start a few games, but then eventually he'll be incorporated the way Camavinga has. And I'm okay with that minimal growing pain if it means we get Camavinga, Tchouameni, and Fede as a midfield trio moving forward, as to move on from the current trio we have that gave us so much. So, I'm hoping that this is a positive what if in Real Madrid history, that we saw this. And just to go back, guys, to has the ship sailed in 3 years thing, I really am disappointed about the whole thing from the way he handled it. It really felt like he went out of his way so much to talk about his childhood club and his dream club, only to do this. And I had a really smart friend, one of the smartest guys I know. I remember back in the winter told me hey, Kiyan, I know you're way more connected than I am. And I know you really think Mbappe is going to come. But I just wanted you to be aware that I'm a business guy, and it's not inconceivable that he's using this whole childhood dream club thing to just as a bargaining chip and then screw you at the last second. I was like, nah, man, you're out of your mind. But this is kind of what happened. I mean, that's what happened. He used this as a bargaining chip. However you want to spin it, he uses both as a bargaining chip. And it just changed my perception of him. And I don't know how I'm going to feel about him in 3 years, but for sure, I'm kind of hoping that we draw PSG because I just want to see him. I just want to see him see what the fans will do to him because it changed my perception of him totally. Like and I've always been the kind of guy that was like, get your bag, take your money. I'm not going to judge you for that. But this one, like, with the amount of money, it's not like he was coming to Madrid to be homeless, He's going to be handsomely paid. So it'll be really interesting to see what the mood is in 3 years or so. But it was a bummer. Total bummer.
You know what, Kiyan? It makes you respect and just love guys like Benzema, Modric, Marcelo, all that much more because of the way not only they act on the field, but off the field. And like, we've never, ever had contract issues with any of them. And like, they've always just like, their love for the club has always been above anything else. And it just like, those are the types of players you want at your club. And just, it kind of reinstills that for me. But one thing I wanted, maybe this is like what we can close on, is like, I think we get to maybe a bigger picture discussion on these state-run, oil-fed clubs, because now it's not just City and PSG. You've got Newcastle now as part of the picture. Like, don't forget, in 3 years, Newcastle will be, I mean, they're the wealthiest club in the world. They're going to be right there.
Third in the Premier League since January. Third in the Premier League since January.
They're going to be right there competing with whenever the next big player, the next big generational talent comes. Newcastle's going to be right there offering 3 times the amount of money. So I guess the thing that, like, when you zoom out on this, like, where are the 2 generational talents, the new quote unquote Messi and Ronaldo of this era? Where are they playing? They're not playing at Real Madrid and Barcelona. They're playing at City and PSG. And I think that's the thing that's maybe a little bit worrisome coming out of today, is like, this is the new reality.
I'll also just give a couple more names. One of them is not Real Madrid related at all, but you mentioned, like, puts into perspective Marcelo and co. and what they've done. Jurgen Klopp recently signed a contract for Liverpool, and I don't know if this was talked about much, but he didn't get a raise. He just, if there's anyone who could have asked for all the money in the world, it would have been Klopp, like, to just stay. And he was like, no, just whatever you're paying me now is fine. And I thought that, like, it also sets a good tone for his players that, like, we're building something here. This is a project, and you're bought in or bought out. So I'm Jurgen Klopp. He obviously he didn't come out and say it like this, but the message he sent to me was like, I'm Klopp. I came here and I'm all in, and you need to pay me more because I believe in this project. I'm not here for money. So, and the other one is like, you go back to all the legends of the club, like Fernando Redondo, like, who was pushed out of the club, unfortunately, didn't want to leave. He goes to Milan, he's injured, and he tells Milan, hey, don't pay me. I'm not playing. I'm injured. Like, players like that, it's not that I want everyone to do that, because, obviously I don't expect everyone to be like that, but it just puts it into perspective, as you said, Matt, that, like, again, it's, the other thing, if you guys want to talk about it, I don't know how you guys feel about family members being agents of players, but it's always been a super annoying thing for me that, like, because it's and here's where I would separate it, like, because I think the counter to this
I don't have a single example of where that has worked out well.
No, and look, the counter to that is, well, like, hey, Kiyan, like, you look at, like, Haaland and Pogba's agent, rest in peace, Mino Raiola, but, like, it's not like only the families try to get the money. But I think where it gets convoluted is when you have family members as your agents, they start to give their opinions on where you should. It's just like, look, we all have families. You know, we all know what it's like to have our parents like try to tell us what to do or whatever. But all the reports here say that like his family didn't really want to leave France, and like there was, I think that he was pressured. I'm not going to make an excuse from him, but certainly it wasn't just him making this decision ultimately. I think there was a lot of hands in the pot, a lot of advice being given, and a lot of, whether it's his family or an entire state, the convolution of all this makes it a little bit more messy too. I think it's different than just having a straightforward agent. And we all know what it was like with Neymar and his dad too as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's just like, I just think up till the last week, it was like 2 contract offers. Then this last week, it became, hey, like, do you want to make a stupid decision by leaving to Real Madrid because of what we're putting on the table, is what they tried to do to him. Like, hey, and then, yeah, you get to his family, and, you know, the family are not even thinking on the same terms as him. Inevitably, a lot of people around him are encouraged and motivationally aligned to tell him to stay, take the money. And this time is something interesting. And going back to what I was talking about player power in basketball, a lot of intelligent fans of the teams LeBron was on, Cleveland Cavaliers and Lakers, actually did not like the way he operated whatsoever on those teams, because he would go to the team, he would get all the concessions, he would get to bring his own people on the flights, he'd control the organization. And ultimately, when you command this much leverage and money and attention, it actually does increase individual power, but at the cost of the whole. And this seems to be the sort of thing you're referring to, where people who do submit to the organization in some level, they set a tone for highly successful organizations. And in that sense, it is a blessing in disguise that we didn't get a player whose power might even disrupt us a little bit in the medium term with the way we try and, you know, make everyone fit within a structure. And we've seen what that did to Barcelona when they started just saying yes to all their players for everything. They ended up with an old squad that had way too much say in who was the coach. And so from that standpoint, you know, it's not the end of the world at all. In 2 years, we may even be in a position where we have more leverage. Football is changing, you know, like Liverpool, I don't know if it's all about the best players anymore, because Liverpool are the most successful Champions League team of the since Real Madrid in 2018, I would say. Starting that season, if you cut off 2017-18 on, they've been the best Champions League team. And for most of those years, their midfield was Henderson, Wijnaldum, and Fabinho. I love those guys. I love Henderson. I love Wijnaldum. But they're not Modric or Cruz or Xavi. And they still were very successful. So for me, I'm not as beat up about Real and Barca not getting Mbappe, Haaland. I think football has shown that it's more about there are many collective solutions. And it's also shown that the individual mentality of players matters a lot, the way they take care of themselves. That's something that if you can achieve organizational alignment where you can influence the players on that level, you'll do better than a team that just throws money at people. And I think there's a lot of nuance here. And that's why I can't really find myself getting too upset over this, other than the fact that the front three we would have put next year would have been incredible for sure. And just one more thing to say, I don't think we would have signed Haaland even if we knew we weren't getting Mbappe. And even now, I'm pretty sure there's a rigorous player evaluation and decision-making process that I have full faith in. They're going to look at the mentality, trajectory, health, everything of the player before they sign anyone. And lastly, you know, winning the CL with this core, with Benzema, Cruz, Modric, is going to be so gratifying if we do manage to win it. And regardless, I think this season has been very gratifying because we knocked out some of these top clubs, 2 oil clubs, and Chelsea. In fact, we knocked out everyone but Newcastle when it comes to those types of teams. And we did it with the same aging core, with a bunch of 40 million teenagers that we shouldn't have signed, as people told us. And we're here.
If I could add something to that, talking about the aging core and the young players. So from a player recruitment perspective, so the one thing, just going back to a bit to the squad recruitment side, is that right now I think the squad is in an interesting position because, like, if you look at the age curves and everything, like, you have like the bunch of really young players who are going to hit their peak. And then you have a bunch of like older players who are in theory past their peak. Then you have the Benzemas and Modric of the world, but which are just a handful of them. But all in all, like it looks like the squad is on those two extremes, which is why I like signings like, say, guys like Bernardo or Gnabry, because we're talking about players that are right at the peak of the age curve. So it's like 26, 27. I think it's it's not considering that the club already has a lot of young talent and the veterans. I think there should be some prioritizing in signing players in that middle part of the age curve. It wouldn't hurt to have a couple of those in the squad right now and have them play an important role in the squad.
Yeah, and I think they've shown they already prioritize players on either side of the age curve that have a good fitness trajectory, like they've kept Benzema, Cruz, and Modric. So that's why I'm honestly quite optimistic. Just because, a situation like this, if we're upset as fans, the players are going to relate with Mbappe, but it's also going to galvanize them. It's going to galvanize the whole club. This is the sort of thing where like the whole club thought they were getting him, and I'm sure they're going to make the right moves. Yeah, like honestly, I'm like less upset than I could have ever expected after something like this. Even though I understand the value of someone like Mbappe, it's like we've been forced to finally not go after the Galactico and just make the smartest choices you possibly could. And for years, everyone said, don't buy Galacticos, like build a smart team. All right, now we're going to build a smart team. It's what it is.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Vinicius Ballon d'Or 2024. Yay. Sorry.
I mean, just talking about him, I see his trajectory is better than Neymar right now because, again, what you do off the pitch, how much you focus is really important. And the guy never makes a selfish decision. Like, I've never seen him do anything on the pitch that's selfish. Like, I've seen a lot more highly regarded players do a lot more immature things on the pitch consistently than I've seen Vinicius this season. He's so mature. And, like, I think his trajectory is something that's honestly alone something to awe at right now. Like, he's always thinking about taking the touch that gets you closer to goal. It's never about embellishing anything.
Yeah, and I think there's room also to have a breakout star that we don't really know about. It's not on our radar right now. Like just the fact that 3 years ago we didn't really know who Pedri was. It's possible. And as you guys said, like there's still a bright future. This club has won more Champions League titles in the past 5 years than Mbappe has in his entire. I mean, I don't know what my wording stuck there. I just started talking and I don't even know what I was trying to say. But my point was that this club has won many Champions League titles with or without Mbappe and will continue to do so. That's what I was trying to say. And we have a chance now to build an exciting squad. Let me ask you guys this question to end that. If you had to predict who's going to have more success in the next 3 years, Real Madrid or PSG? Who would you say? Are we going to look in 3 years and like, because right now the popular narrative and take is like Mbappe made a mistake. The ship has sailed and we're going to dominate without him. He's going to crash out of Europe once again. Or is this going to be a scenario where they bring in Luis Campos, they bring in a different coach, they get better players and more structure? How do you see this panning out? Give us your hot takes. We'll start with you, Jose.
Let's see. The thing is that if you give my nightmare scenario is like PSG gets Luis Campos and Zidane, and then I just stop watching football for the next 3 years. So barring a scenario like that, I am still on the side that Real Madrid will have more success in the next 3 years than PSG. Simply because I just don't think the PSG project has a good track record. And even the fact that they are probably willing to give Mbappe veto power over decisions, I also don't think that amount of power ends well. So I just don't see yet that, like, maybe by the end of the summer, we're saying something different. But as of today, May 21st, I don't see the PSG project getting its stuff together anytime soon. So I would still bet on Real Madrid doing better for the next 3 years.
And just to add to that, because I think I'm of the same viewpoint, I think it comes down to if even if Leonardo's gone, if Al Khalifi is still one of the top dogs, for me it's a cultural thing, and like the culture he's created at PSG. And we saw that, like his tantrum after the round of 16, like, and now reports came out after that like he's rude to employees, like he's pushed people, he's verbally abusive. Like, I think that it comes from the top down, and that culture is just not one that's going to be successful.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting here because it isn't Mbappe's and PSG's favor for them to win now. And so I think the changes that are made should be significant. But like you said, the culture at PSG is really, really bad. Even among like clubs, that any club, there's no club that has ever reached a CL final with this pathetic a culture, in my opinion. And they reached the CL final a couple of years ago in Lisbon. And basically, Leonardo for Ocampos and Pochettino for Zidane is one thing. But are you gonna get to firing El Khalifi? I saw a lot of jokes that like he stopped talking to El Khalifi and he talked directly to the Emir, because El Khalifi is now a meme in European football. He is known as a meme. Like, he is a joke who does not know how to run a football club. I hate to say it, but like everyone who's ever been in PSG has said this. And frankly, the players have to eat together. You need organizational alignment if you want to win anything. So is Mbappe going to be able to get the players to eat together? Is he going to be able to get El Khalifi out of there? And I believe even if they're good, the changes he makes, they're going to take about 3 to 4 years to start taking effect. I don't think they're going to take effect immediately. So from that standpoint, yeah, like the next few years, it's just going to be Real Madrid. PSG are like, the best case scenario is, I think, like getting close to the later ends of the competitions with a better squad, but it's going to take time.
I think that urgency to win now also can be problematic as well, because you can make bad decisions. And, I suppose in most clubs, you can, if you're into that position, you may sacrifice long-term for short-term risks. It would be more detrimental, but I suppose if you have as much money as PSG, maybe it's not as detrimental to them. But certainly there's always a risk, and you look at the way, no normal club is going to afford all these players and all these contracts at the amount of the salary that Messi and Mbappe and Neymar are making. Obviously that didn't work for tactical reasons, but also for health reasons for large stretches of it. And I do wonder what their summer will look like, because the quote-unquote greatest transfer summer of all time that they had last season hasn't really panned out. I mean, Ashraf is a great signing. Ramos, for reasons of decline and health, hasn't been. Messi hasn't been as productive as we assumed he'd be. Neymar hasn't been healthy. He has distractions as well. I wonder what the direction they go in now is. But I certainly do think, at least if PSG stop meddling in some of those affairs and get a proper sporting director and start recruiting players properly, they should be a great team. But I understand your skepticism of that. Matt, do you think the culture there, does it dissuade future stars from going there, or is the money factor trumping that anyway?
It may. I think those who are extremely calculate, like, even I'll use the example of Pogba. Like, I think they want him as a free agent signing, but he's going to go with Juventus most likely, because he knows it's a club where he's thrived in the past. He's dealt with a poor culture for the last however many years at Manchester United. Like, I think he just wants something where he knows he can be successful. He knows it's got like a different type of values and vibe at the club. And so I think he's one of your first examples of a guy that probably won't choose PSG, even if he would get a better offer, because Juventus is struggling so much financially. So I think that's one of the first examples.
Yeah, there's almost a contradiction where like they offer you so much money and it's not going to be serious, that like very few serious players ever end up there. Like Ibrahimovic was there and he tried changing things, but he never loved it. And Mbappe, like Neymar, we saw him pretty much become less professional as he went from Barcelona to PSG, in my opinion, from everything I was reading. So yeah, it is an interesting contradiction. Pressure to make decisions quickly, pressure to change fast, but also a culture that's been rotting for so long. But again, I think the main thing is I think they will make the right changes, but it will take time to really take.
And I think even from a branding perspective, like, yes, you can make more money going to PSG, but even from a branding perspective, your brand still gets larger if you play for Premier League or La Liga club. Like, that is still better for the player from a branding perspective. So
the only reason they get more money is because these governments can bring in their own companies and literally fund them and make it look like sponsorships. It's crazy. Man City's number one on the Deloitte revenue list. That was the dumbest thing I'd ever seen. That's like all their own companies doing the same thing, like funding them, and then they list them as like third parties. But yeah, like if you want actual pull in the world, you go to Real eventually. And that's why I still think for Mbappe, it's like, can you make me an offer that convinces me to delay this for a couple more years? even though they're all going to be pissed at me and it may not go down the same way.
You know, all this conversation, and Matt, you reminded me too of like El Khalifi coming down and throwing a tantrum at the Bernabeu. All of those, resurfacing all those stories and all this culture stuff makes me even more mad about what Mbappe decided to do this summer. Really. It's a shame, man. It's a shame. Damn shame. All right, well, we should set up a Spaces, guys, maybe next week, Twitter Spaces, to discuss what Vinicius, Haaland, and Mbappe tactical fit in 3 years, what that'll look like. I think that'll go down really well with the fan base. So, yeah, I guess we'll wrap it here. We'll be back tomorrow. I think Lucas for sure. I don't know about Om. Maybe will join us on a show tomorrow. The plan is to do something more calculated, and maybe we'll have more information by tomorrow. Maybe not. You know, we'll see. But maybe we'll do another. The plan is to record again tomorrow too with Lucas to get his take as well, because Lucas was on the inside track as well with managing Madrid. He had all kinds of sources, and he believed it was done deal back in the summer, like everyone else did. It'll be interesting to see what his take is as well. So, guys, thank you for spending time on this silly podcast on a beautiful Saturday. So I hope you guys get to enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks for joining. Take care, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. Thanks for having me. And yeah, looking forward to more discussions, hopefully of the real summer, not the potential Mbappe, Haaland, Vinicius trio that we're missing out on.
Yeah, I'm excited for the Champions League final, and I have a feeling it's going to be a phenomenal few months to be a Real Madrid fan, even though we missed out. There's a lot of money that we were going to put towards them that's just there.
There's a lot of stuff that can be done with that war chest to build the club for the coming 10 years. So I am also very positive about the situation. It's, of course, a bummer to lose like one of the generational attackers for now, but there are many things that can be done with those resources. So let's hope the club uses them wisely.
Indeed.
Absolutely agree. Florentino, just in case you're listening, so here's a summary of what you should do this summer. Avoid Salah, avoid Lewandowski, get Gnabry, throw the money at Reece James, make it happen, get Tchouameni, call it a summer. We'll win the Champions League. We're set for the next 3-5 years. And do not spend money on anyone that you don't need to spend money on just to prove a point. You got this, Flo. We trust you, and thanks for your best effort in signing Mbappe. It wasn't your fault. Let's move onwards. Take care, guys. Thank you. All right, before we wrap it up, you know the drill. We'd like to give a shout out to our patrons over on patreon.com/managingmadrid, where you can get a ton of bonus content if you sign up, and also a specific shout out to our $10 plus patrons, because if you pledge $10 or more, not only do you get guaranteed responses to your questions, but you also get a specific shout out on the podcast. So shout out to Brandon Alvarez, Willie Reed, Wei Pairing, Wamik Jamal, Umair Mahadi, Tyler Simon, Tyler Dixon, Tobias Royal Botcher, Tariq Goktas, Talib Salhab, Tahmid Kalam, Sushank Damala, Sujai Wani, Sumanchu Singh, Shivam Tiwari, Sheikh Hatiri, Shamil, Shabaz Sharapov, Sergio Arispe, Santos Solorzano, Samir Z, Said Mahad, Rishi D, Phoenix, Paulo Fierro, Patrick Diafari, Oscar Barrera, Nico Laxo, Nicolas Zapatero Zubiare, Nicholas Moller, Nick Ribeiro, Nelson Masariego, Muxi Thangal, Mowgli, MJ Diego, Michael Zinberg, Marin Myrtle, Martin Ridman, Logan Stahl, Leon Stavronakis, Kunal Tilakar, Crystal Glass, Kevin Rivera, Jose Cruz, John Fernandez, Jeff Thurston, Jason Fitz, Issam Arabi, Graham Gerard, Gary Kohut, Frederick Antakiro, Frederick Sundros, Faisal Hamdan, S.A. Davisito, Eloy Enriquez, Edward Sossman, Daniel Williams, Christian Toft, Christian Acosta, Charles Williams, Brendan Powers, Brandon Stevens, Austin Fury Erdman, Ashik Bashar, Armin Gashi, Armando L, Anton Zgrudenko, Anirudh Singh, Alexis Ceniceros, Alex Rose, Aizaz Hussein, Adrian Rios, Adar Zalikovic, Adam Dorsey, Bella Chow, Ramtin Mahrur, Fabian Moreno, and Daniel Smith. These are getting more difficult every week because I'm just getting tongue-tied. There's so many, but I'm super appreciative. It's a great problem to have. I appreciate you guys all taking this journey with us, and love you all, and Hala Madrid.